Welcome to Cycl'n Vancouver. Hi, my name is Steve. I'm a 60-year-old guy, 6'5", around 250 pounds, who loves getting out on the bike and going cycling. Well, that and eating lots of baked goods. Normally, I'm cycling around Vancouver, but this week I am in the northeast area of Spain on an epic cycling adventure heading north through the Pyrenees. So, if you're interested in seeing what day 4 of our epic ride through the Pyrenees look like from the back of a road bike ridden by some spandex-wearing old dude, sit back and relax. This is ride 443. Today is Sunday, September 21st, 2025, and we have extremely different weather today than we've had on this trip so far. The sun is gone, and now we have a very gray, nasty-looking sky and a temperature of around 19 Celsius for this ride. In today's ride, we're going to head to the Mediterranean and the French town of Bagnols-sur-Mer. But unlike yesterday, today's ride will mainly be downhill for the first half or so, and all the climbing will be packed into the end. Here is my Strava route map for this ride. I did this ride last year. Unfortunately, just before arriving at the hotel for the night, I managed to screw up a hard right turn, crashed, and broke 5 ribs and a collarbone. I also suffered a nasty head injury, which as a result, I barely remember anything that occurred over the following week. I was so happy that I'd recorded the ride. In fact, I have almost no memory of that ride other than what I saw in the video. If you're interested, I posted a link to ride 367 in the description below. That crash and the week following it was difficult. I've never known pain like that, which I experienced with those broken ribs, or just how difficult it would be to find a position comfortable enough so I could sleep. Now, I'm not one of those people that gets worked up or triggered at the thought of riding here again. I am not worried about reliving the trauma, and this is not some form of catharsis for me. I have been thinking about that missed turn off and on ever since, and the opportunity to finish today's ride is one of the reasons that I came back here. And even though Leonard used that approach as some form of hook to encourage me to come, it probably wasn't necessary. Rather, I love cycling in Europe, and despite what happened to me last year, I knew I would absolutely love to return and ride here again. And the itinerary made this cycling trip look intriguing. In fact, as Chris reminded me this year, I swore to him last year that I would return and complete it. Of course, I have no memory of that. I did tell myself to be a bit more careful this time round though. Since I arrived in Girona on the 17th, Chris has been warning us about the weather forecasted for today's ride, and he has been steadily following that forecast. Those forecasts have remained pretty consistent, and it looks like this area is going to be inundated with rain today. While we had planned to get out early and try our best to stay ahead of the expected storm, our start was delayed for several reasons, and now it's quite uncertain what weather we will encounter today, but right now it's dry and, at least for me, nicely warm. Though I hadn't asked Chris, or anyone else for that matter, I kind of expected we would just follow the same route that we rode last year. And while it started out that way, construction issues quickly led us to divert onto a new route. I like that. Of course, there aren't that many different ways here to get to the coast, so I wasn't overly surprised to find us back on familiar territory.
People. Merci. Merci.
That paper mill there is on the site of a former cigarette paper mill from the turn of the 20th century. The owner of that former mill built a house for his daughter in Bagnols-sur-Mer. That house has since been converted into a hotel, and we will be staying at that hotel tonight.
The rest of the hill. Left, right?
Do you remember this bridge?
Yep. Mr. Eiffel.
This one's Eiffel inspired. Copycat. You remember the bite holes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try and regroup for a video in here.
Okay. An unplanned rolling selfie video, yes.
Team, what a team. Run up, come.
I seem to recall last year hearing Chris say that this bridge was built by the Eiffel Company. It turns out that I misheard him. This bridge was built to look like it was constructed by Eiffel. I definitely see the style similarities though. And yes, I did check the reported bullet holes left behind from a gun battle that occurred on the bridge back in World War II, and those holes did have the characteristic protruding metal edges that one would expect to find remaining after an object forcibly passed through the metal. Those holes definitely were not drilled. I rode out in front for a while, and though I had suffered a bad concussion last year and couldn't remember much of that ride, I had recorded it and turned it into a video which I have watched several times. Though I was surprised to remember many parts of this route as I encountered them, it was impossible for me to say whether I had actually remembered them from the ride or just from the video. While it's probably the latter, I am curious whether I would have remembered any of the former route without the video aid. Of course, I'll never know.
Morning. Excusez. Grazie.
I think there is a cherry orchard just to the left that we rode through last year. I was expecting the group to turn towards it, but we went straight instead. I like all the new areas, but I was looking forward to the orchard. Perhaps this way is a little quicker, and we took it to try to keep ahead of the storm. Chris says that he spoke with Vicky and that she told him that our morning starting point was getting hit hard by that storm. We'd better ride quicker. back onto familiar territory once again. Uh-oh, I'm starting to feel raindrops. It's pretty light at the moment, but this is not a good sign. The one thing I really hate about disc brakes is the squealing they make when they get wet. Although I've only had this bike for a few months, I've never heard the brakes squeal until I brought the bike here. What a horrible noise. The rain is starting to get heavier. Some group members brought rain gear and they've switched into that. I normally don't ride in the rain, so I have no need for rain gear. I'm just wearing my usual summer getup, shorts and a t-shirt. But right now, I'm perfectly fine. As I was approaching the overpass, I managed to drop my chain. I did the usual and reversed the shift. Normally that fixes the problem, I get the chain back on. This time, it didn't work. Rather, every time I tried to pedal, the chain refused to budge. It was as if it were jammed somehow, and I was reluctant to try to force it to my will. You know what they say, don't force it, use a bigger hammer. Well, I didn't have a hammer, so I just pulled over instead to manually fix it. Chris quickly joined me, and we got it all worked out. At least we had cover from the rain under that overpass. That was nice. I didn't really want to leave that cover, but we didn't have much choice.
To any wooden bridges, they're going to be slippery.
Yeah.
There's a few up here.
As we rode along, the rain just got heavier and heavier. Strangely, as much as I wasn't enjoying riding in the rain, at least I still felt pleasantly warm. Parts of the trail may have been blocked for construction, but we were not going to let that put us off, even if we had to ride across mud and grass to get by.
What a delightful day! I don't know. I'm waiting to be struck by lightning for all of my sins.
Yeah, I reckon they're quite low down.
I started to get a little more concerned when the thunder started. Then we got a nice big crack of lightning off to the side. After that, the rain became biblical. Overwhelming, really. I was really hoping that we were going to stop soon and take cover. I was absolutely soaked head to toe, but we pressed on. We really didn't have much choice at the moment. I suspect that Chris was really trying to find somewhere we could stop and get out of this mess, or at least away from the lightning. We finally found a shopping market in a small town, and we pulled under cover by the pickup window. We stayed there long enough until the storm passed, as we waited for Vicky to pick us up and drive us to Bagnères-sur-Mer. I guess I'm still not going to finish this ride, but at least this ending is much more preferable to last year's. Thanks to that biblical rainstorm, we only rode 44 kilometers and climbed 119 meters. And even though I had resigned myself with continuing the ride to Bagnères-sur-Mer, by the time the storm subsided, I had cooled down to the point where I was now just cold and wet. It didn't take long in a well-heated van for me to quickly move past the idea of getting back out on the bike and cycling to the hotel. By then, I was quite content to enjoy the drive.
Heating's on in the van if you feel cold, please get your temperature up.